My dad runs an elite matchmaking agency for the ultra-wealthy. After I lost my job and couldn't find a new one, I planned to just crash at home and live off his money. But instead, he pushed me into a tech conglomerate to work as an undercover spy to gather intel on a high-profile client. I never expected that on my very first day, I'd find out the billionaire CEO is actually my ex-boyfriend. My dad recently landed a massive client. The commission was a whopping $5 million. When I heard the number, my jaw literally dropped, and I started counting the zeros in my head. Oh my God. Rich people really do throw money around like confetti. Before I could even recover from the shock, I noticed my dad's eyes locking onto me. Sienna, this client's request is highly specific. Hearing that, warning bells instantly went off in my head. Having lived with my dad for so many years, nobody knew his sneaky tactics better than me. Sometimes, to guarantee a perfect match, he needed to know the target's deepest, most private preferences. And to get that info, he resorted to some rather unconventional methods. And by unconventional, I mean sending in an undercover spy. Almost everyone in our family had been sent on a mission at some point. He didn't even spare my 70-year-old grandmother. So before he could even finish his sentence, I raised my hands in refusal. Save your breath, Dad. The answer is no. He really had some nerve trusting me with something this big. He wasn't afraid I'd ruin it. My dad stared at my unbothered face, gritted his teeth, and played his ultimate card. If we pull this off, I'll buy you a condo downtown. Fully paid off. My eyes snapped wide open. I slammed my hands on the table and stood right up. Dad, don't you worry. Consider it done. Hey, you can fight with anyone, but you never fight with money. This undercover gig was officially mine. I thought I was being a genius, but turned out I was just a clown. I never in a million years imagined that the fat little sheep my dad wanted me to fleece was my ex-boyfriend. Who would have thought that the shy college boy, who used to blush just holding my hand, had transformed into the hottest new billionaire in the tech world? I stared at Ethan Vance, who was standing before me in a perfectly tailored three-piece suit. I froze for a solid minute. It wasn't until the HR manager nudged me that I snapped out of it. I lowered my head and stammered, Hello, Mr. Vance. I'm your new assistant, Sienna Brooks. Ethan didn't say a word, but I could feel his intense, burning gaze locked onto me. I kept my head down, cringing so hard I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Never in my wildest dreams did I think such a cliché drama plot would happen to me. If I had known it was him, I wouldn't have taken this job even if someone held a gun to my head. Blame my greed. I was so blinded by the condo that I didn't even check the client's name. But now that I was here, I had no choice but to bite the bullet. After what felt like an eternity, just when I thought he was going to ignore me, a deep, velvety voice brushed past my ear. Sienna. Long time no see. I looked up and locked eyes with him. He was smiling. His smile was still incredibly handsome, warm and bright, like spring sunshine. Yet, a cold shiver ran straight down my spine. Because back then, I was the one who dumped him. We met in college. He was the campus heartthrob of the neighboring university, and I was just a quirky, funny girl. The moment I saw him, I was utterly starstruck. I swore to myself I would make this man mine. So, I started chasing him relentlessly. I bought him drinks, brought him lunch, and sent him good morning, afternoon, and night texts without fail every single day. I simped for him for 6 whole months before he finally agreed to be my boyfriend. But we only dated for a little over a month before I called it quits. After that, we completely lost touch. My friends always asked me why we broke up. I would just laugh it off and say we weren't compatible. But deep down, I knew the real reason: he didn't love me. I shook my head, forcing the painful memories out of my mind. But the thought of working closely with him every single day gave me goosebumps. Still, I tried my best to recall his old preferences, wrote them all down in a massive text, and sent it to my dad. A few seconds later, my dad replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a 15-second voice message. The moment I tapped it, my dad's boisterous, unfiltered laughter boomed through my phone. Scared out of my wits, I quickly hit the transcribe to text button. That's my girl. Getting so much intel on day one. You're a natural-born matchmaker. My dad really had no shame. I didn't have the heart to tell him that his $5 million commission was about to go down the drain. While I was debating whether to tell him the truth, my dad sent me a contact card on Snapchat. Before I could even send a question mark, another wave of texts popped up. Sweetheart, from now on, you are personally handling this client. She's our VVVIP. Do not offend her under any circumstances. Treat her like a queen. Your condo depends on this. My heart sank instantly. Great. At this rate, not only were we going to lose the 5 million, but our agency's reputation was going to be completely ruined. But hey, money talks. Who asked my dad to use his financial superpower on me? I could say no to anything, but I could never say no to a free condo. I braced myself and sent a friend request to the client. To my surprise, she accepted it almost instantly. Looking at her profile picture, I was stunned for a second. If I didn't know she was my golden goose, would have mistaken her for Ethan. Her profile picture was solid gray. Ethan's was solid black. In a way, these two actually matched. I chuckled quietly, thinking how unpredictable rich people's tastes were. A message popped up from her, hello. Sticking to the customer first policy, I typed back lightning fast, hello, Ms. Sylvia. I will be personally managing your profile from now on. You can call me Sienna. Let me know if you need anything. After sending it, I waited. The screen showed typing. For a long time, but nothing came through. Just as I was about to lock my phone and go to sleep, a message finally popped up. It was just one simple question. What kind of girls does Ethan Vance like? What kind of girls does Ethan Vance like? I repeated the question in my head. For a second, I dazed off. Come to think of it, I had never actually asked him what his type was. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to write. After hesitating for a moment, I sent a professional reply, don't worry, Ms. Sylvia. Once I find out, you'll be the first to know. I thought working under Ethan would be absolute torture. But surprisingly, he barely paid attention to me. In fact, I rarely even saw him. After laying low for 2 weeks and getting friendly with my coworkers, I began to subtly gather gossip. I dug up everything, from the history of the Vance family to Ethan's legendary moves in the business world. During our afternoon coffee break, I sat with a few girls and steered the conversation toward Ethan. So, do you guys know what kind of girls Mr. Vance likes? One of the senior employees paused, looking thoughtful. Actually, I think Mr. Vance likes. She stopped mid-sentence. I was so close to getting the answer. I couldn't just let her stop there. I pressed, likes what? What kind of girls? Are you really that curious about my type? Hearing that familiar voice, my entire body froze. I slowly, mechanically turned around, and my soul almost left my body. When did Ethan get here? I frantically winked at my coworkers, silently begging them to rescue me. But they only gave me rest in peace looks and scurried away, leaving me to my fate. At that moment, I genuinely wanted to die. Was there anything more embarrassing than talking behind your boss's back and getting caught red-handed? Looking at Ethan's intense gaze, I forced a weak, guilty smile and laughed nervously. Mr. Vance. You misheard. I have so much work to do, I'll just go. I tried to slip past him, but he stepped in and blocked my path. Before I could react, he used his height advantage to corner me, placing his hand on the wall right next to my head, effectively trapping me. He looked down at me with a smirk playing on his lips. If you're so curious, why didn't you just ask me? Looking at his insanely handsome face so close to mine, I swallowed hard. My heart skipped a beat. If I didn't know better, I might have actually fallen for him right then and there. But unfortunately, he was already targeted by a wealthy heiress. While my mind was running wild, he reached out and gently flicked my forehead. What's going on in that head of yours? Speak. The slight sting made me frown, and before I could stop myself, I blurted out, fine, what kind of girls do you like then? I like. He stared at my face and suddenly smiled, his eyes narrowing slightly. His hand reached out, playing with a strand of my hair. Those gorgeous, sultry eyes never left mine as he leaned closer. The distance between us shrank until I could feel his warm breath on my face. I tried to lean back, but my back was already pressed against the wall. There was nowhere to run. As he leaned in even further, I put my hands on his chest to stop him, turning my head away. Don't get any closer. Ethan let out a soft chuckle and stopped. Just as I was about to turn my head back, his face brushed against my ear, and his deep voice vibrated through me. I like pretty ones. His breath tickled my cheek, and my face instantly flushed red. He gave me a teasing look, smirked, and walked away, leaving me standing there, completely frozen for several seconds. Then, it hit me. Was he basically calling me ugly? I stood in the corridor of Vance Technologies for 3 full minutes, glaring at the empty space Ethan had just vacated, mentally incinerating him with laser beams from my eyes. I like pretty ones. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath, smoothing down my tailored beige pencil skirt with aggressive force. Arrogant, pretentious, tech bro menace. Did he just imply that I wasn't pretty? Me? The girl who had an entire fan club. In the university theater department before I threw my dignity into a meat grinder to chase him across 2 campuses. I stomped back to my assistant desk, plopped into the ergonomic leather chair, and whipped out my phone. The Snapchat screen was still open to Ms. Sylvia's chat. The ominous solid gray avatar sat there, quietly demanding results for $5 million. My thumbs flew across the glass. Sienna, update on Mr. Vance's type. According to direct sources, he has exceptionally shallow taste. He prefers women who are conventionally attractive, possibly robotic, and devoid of basic emotional warmth. I recommend a wardrobe overhaul, classic elegance, minimal speaking, and perhaps an air of untouchable mystery. I hit send with a satisfied smirk. Take that, Vance. A minute passed. Then the little typing indicator bubbled up. Sylvia, is that what he told you? Sienna, verbatim. He looked me dead in the eye and said it. Sylvia, did he seem sincere? I paused. Sincere? No, he looked like a smug cat that had just trapped a very flustered mouse against an ivory-painted wall and enjoyed the squeaking far too much. Sienna, he seemed thoroughly amused with himself. But fear not, Ms. Sylvia. I have already drafted a comprehensive profile on his daily habits, schedule, and dietary preferences. Tomorrow, we begin stage 2, optimizing your appeal. Sylvia, what are his dietary preferences? I leaned back, tapping my chin. If there was one thing I knew about Ethan Vance, it was that his stomach was painfully predictable. 5 years ago, when he was surviving on campus dining hall rations and coding until 4 a.m. in the computer science lab, he had specific quirks that bordered on ritualistic. Sienna, he hates cilantro with a burning passion. He drinks black Americanos with 0 sugar when working, but when he's stressed or pulling an all-nighter, he secretly drinks chilled strawberry milk. Don't ask me how I know, just trust the intel. The typing bubble appeared, vanished, appeared again, and then disappeared. 10 minutes later, a single message popped up. Sylvia, good to know. Thank you. Sienna. I smiled, feeling a brief surge of professional competence. If my dad could see me now, he'd already be handing over the deed to the 2-bedroom penthouse overlooking the river. Brooks. The sharp bark of Marcus, the executive VP of operations, snapped me out of my daydream. He dropped a thick stack of folders onto my desk with a heavy thud. Mr. Vance's schedule for tomorrow just changed, Marcus said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The board meeting moved to 8:30 a.m., and he wants the quarterly hardware diagnostics cross-referenced with the European branch's ledger before 8 a.m. Also, he requested that you personally bring his morning briefing into his office at 7 sharp. 7? I gaped. The sun barely exists at 7. He's the CEO, Brooks. The sun rises when he tells it to. Don't be late. The next morning at 6:55 a.m., I stood outside Ethan's office door, armed with a tablet, the cross-reference reports, and a steaming cup of artisan black coffee from the boutique cafe across the street. I took 3 deep breaths, adjusted my collar, and knocked twice. Enter. Ethan was already sitting behind his vast obsidian desk, illuminated by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the waking skyline of the city. He had his suit jacket off, his crisp white shirt sleeves rolled up to his forearms, revealing the sharp lines of his wrists and a sleek silver watch. His hair was slightly tousled, the only remnant of the boyish, exhausted college senior I used to know. Good morning, Mr. Vance, I said, putting on my most polished customer service voice. I walked over and set the coffee precisely 2 inches to the right of his mouse pad. Your quarterly reports, and your coffee. Ethan didn't look up from his monitors immediately. His fingers typed out a rapid sequence of commands before he finally clicked enter and turned his dark, searching gaze on me. You're early, he observed. Promptness is a core company value, sir. He reached for the coffee cup, took a sip, and his brow twitched almost imperceptibly. Colombian roast. Double shot. Unsweetened. He set it down, his eyes narrowing slightly with amusement. You have a good memory, Assistant Brooks. I am an efficient assistant, Mr. Vance. It is my job to remember details. Is that so? He leaned back, crossing his arms. The fabric of his shirt stretched over his broad shoulders. Then do you also remember what happened the last time you brought me coffee at 7 in the morning? My heart gave a sudden, violent thud against my ribs. Of course I remembered. It was during finals week in our senior year. He had been living in the library for 3 days straight, subsisting on instant ramen. I had marched in with a thermal flask of coffee and a box of warm blueberry scones, sat on the desk right in front of his laptop, and refused to leave until he ate. When he finally took a bite, he had looked up at me with those soft, impossibly gentle eyes, pulled me down by the waist, and rested his forehead against my stomach, whispering, "What would I do without you, Sienna?" Back then, I thought that was love. Only later did I realize that gratitude and affection weren't the same thing as burning, undeniable devotion. I have no recollection of prior encounters, sir, I lied cleanly, maintaining an impassive mask. I treat all professional history as a clean slate. Ethan stared at me, the corners of his mouth curving into an enigmatic half-smile that sent warmth straight to my ears. A clean slate, he repeated softly. How convenient. He reached into the small mini-fridge beneath his desk, pulled out a glass bottle of chilled strawberry milk, popped the cap, and took a slow, deliberate sip while maintaining unbroken eye contact with me. My jaw nearly detached from my skull. Rough night, Mr. Vance? I blurted before I could filter myself. He set the pink bottle down right next to the luxury coffee. Very. Someone was asking a lot of questions about me yesterday. It kept me up. I swallowed hard, clutching my tablet like a shield. Must have been someone. Very nosy. Very nosy, he agreed, leaning forward onto his desk, his voice dropping into that dangerously rich timbre. And terribly misinformed. Misinformed about what? About what I find pretty. Before I could process the sudden drop in room temperature, Ethan reached over, pulled a golden embossed invitation from his drawer, and slid it across the table toward me. The annual Horizon Tech Gala is this Friday, he said, shifting back to his brisk, authoritative tone. Our primary investors and board members will be in attendance. You will be attending as my executive liaison. Me? I blinked. Doesn't Ms. Vance, shouldn't you bring a high society date? Like an heiress or a venture capitalist? Ethan's eyes glinted with something sharp and unreadable. I don't need an heiress. I need an assistant who can keep her eyes open and her mouth shut. Can you do that, Sienna? The challenge hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Of course, Mr. Vance, I replied with sweet venom. I wouldn't dream of disappointing you. Dad, you have to find out who Sylvia really is, I hissed into my phone during my lunch break, pacing the secluded fire escape on the 32nd floor. She's paying $5 million, she barely texts, her profile picture is a gray square. And I feel like I'm walking into a bear trap every time I breathe near Ethan. On the other end of the line, the sound of my father crunching on potato chips echoed loudly. Sienna, baby, listen to your old man, my dad said casually. In the high net worth matchmaking business, anonymity is everything. Ms. Sylvia comes from old money. Old, quiet, eccentric money. She wants Vance locked down before the end of the quarter. If she wants to remain a ghost until the formal introduction, that's her prerogative. Dad, he took me to his office and drank strawberry milk while staring at me. Like he wanted to dissect me. That means the intel worked. See? You're bonding. We are not bonding. He dumped a mountain of corporate data on my desk and invited me to the Horizon Gala. There was a sudden, dramatic pause on the line. Then, my dad shrieked so loudly. I had to pull the phone 3 inches away from my ear. The Horizon Gala? The event of the season? Sienna. Do you realize what this means? That I have to work overtime on a Friday? No, you fool. It's the ultimate staging ground. My dad was practically vibrating through the cellular network. Ms. Sylvia will be attending the gala. Incognito to observe him. I will arrange the client's seating. All you have to do is position Ethan near table 4, spill a drink or create an organic opening, and let the magic happen. If this match connects on Friday, the contract completes. And your downtown condo will be signed over to you by Monday morning. The word condo echoed in my mind like a sacred hymn. 2 bedrooms. Hardwood floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A kitchen island with marble countertops where I would never have to cook instant noodles again. Table 4, I whispered. Are you sure she'll be there? 100%. Just make sure he looks accessible. Don't let him stand in the corner looking like a terrifying tech dictator. Make him smile. Dad, making Ethan Vance smile on command is like asking a brick wall to recite Shakespeare. Use your charm, sweetie. You did it in college. And look how that turned out. I snapped, but my dad had already hung up, leaving me with the dial tone. I groaned, leaning my head against the cold concrete wall of the stairwell. How did my life turn into a high-stakes corporate espionage rom-com? My phone buzzed. Sylvia, are you going to the Horizon Gala on Friday? I jumped. How did she know? Right, Dad probably updated her file. Sienna, yes, Ms. Sylvia. I have secured an operational position right beside Mr. Vance. I will be your inside operative on the ground. When the time is right, I will guide him to table 4 for your fateful encounter. A few seconds ticked by. Sylvia, what will you be wearing? I stared at the screen, bewildered. Sienna, me? Oh, just standard executive liaison attire. Probably a conservative black evening gown. Why? Sylvia, black doesn't suit your skin tone. Wear emerald green. Low back. No. Heavy jewelry. I rubbed my eyes. Did my golden goose client just give me fashion advice? Sienna, Ms. Sylvia, you are too kind, but I am just the staff. The spotlight should be on you. Sylvia, Ethan dislikes women who dress like corporate auditors at social events. If you look miserable beside him, he will leave early. If you look stunning, he stays. Wear green. I blinked. Was there some secret 4D chess psychology here that only ultra-billionaires understood? Sienna, understood, boss. Emerald green it is. Friday night arrived with the force of an oncoming freight train. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis was an ocean of crystal chandeliers, floating ice sculptures, and champagne flutes that cost more than my monthly student loan payment. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, Cuban cigars, and corporate ambition. I stood by the entrance, tugging self-consciously at the emerald green silk dress I had rented using the agency's emergency expense card. It clung to every curve, pooled gracefully at my ankles, and dipped daringly low in the back, held together by delicate crisscrossing straps. I checked my compact mirror one last time. Natural makeup, hair swept up in a loose, elegant chignon with a few soft strands framing my face. Not bad, Brooks, I whispered to myself. You look like $1 million. Or at least, a fully paid off 2-bedroom apartment. You're late. The voice came from right behind my shoulder. I spun around, and my breath hitched in my throat. Ethan Vance in a standard business suit was dangerous enough. Ethan Vance in a bespoke black tuxedo, complete with a satin lapel, hand-tied bow tie, and cuff links that caught the light like cold diamonds, was an absolute hazard to public safety. His gaze dropped from my eyes, slowly tracing the neckline of the green dress, sweeping over the exposed skin of my collarbones, and lingering on my waist, before rising back to meet my eyes. His pupils were visibly dilated. For a fraction of a second, the cold, composed billionaire vanished, replaced entirely by the stunned college boy who once dropped his entire tray of cafeteria food when I walked into the library wearing a summer sundress. You. Ethan cleared his throat, adjusting his cufflink with a rare hint of hesitation. You're wearing green. Company policy, I replied smoothly, masking the frantic flutter in my chest. Do I pass the pretty test, Mr. Vance, or should I go wait in the coat check? Ethan stepped closer, so close that the crisp scent of cedarwood, bergamot, and ironed linen completely enveloped me. He bent down slightly, his voice dropping to a velvety whisper near my ear. You passed that test 5 years ago, Sienna. You just never waited around to get your score. My heart hammered violently against my ribs. Before I could process the weight of his words, he extended his arm, elbow bent, offering it to me. Shall we? I swallowed the lump in my throat, placed my gloved hand over his forearm, and allowed him to lead me into the lion's den. The next hour was a blur of high-stakes networking. Every major CEO, venture capitalist, and political figure in the tri-state area wanted a piece of Ethan Vance. He was brilliant, cutting, and commanding. He negotiated 3 multi-million-dollar partnerships between sips of vintage champagne without ever checking his notes. And through it all, his hand never strayed far from my lower back. Whenever an overeager foreign investor leaned in a little too close to address me, Ethan's hand would subtly tighten against my waist, pulling me a fraction of an inch closer to his side. Whenever a waiter passed with hors d'oeuvres, Ethan would quietly pluck off the canapes containing shellfish, placing only the smoked salmon crisps onto my small plate, remembering, without a single word, that I was mildly allergic to crab. My brain was short-circuiting. Focus, Sienna. I scolded myself. You are an operative. $5 million. Table 4. I discreetly scanned the ballroom. Table 4 was situated near the raised orchestra platform. Seated there were several older society matrons and a few vacant chairs draped in velvet. Mr. Vance, I whispered, tugging gently on his sleeve. He immediately stopped mid-conversation with an AI hardware supplier, turning his full, undivided attention to me. What is it? Are you tired? Do you want to leave? No, I said quickly. Look over there, near table 4. I believe the chair of the Henderson Foundation is seated there. You mentioned wanting to discuss their philanthropic grant, right? We should head over. Ethan followed my gaze toward table 4. His eyes narrowed slightly, a strange, calculating flicker passing over his features. Table 4, he asked, his voice laced with quiet amusement. Yes. It's prime positioning. If you insist. He guided me through the crowd toward the table. But before we could reach the perimeter, a slick, booming voice cut through the ambient noise. Ethan. My boy. A tall, broad-shouldered man with slicked back hair and a sharp European cut suit stepped into our path. It was Julian Sterling, Ethan's primary competitor in the cloud infrastructure sector, and a notorious industry playboy. Sterling, Ethan said, his tone instantly dropping 10 degrees below zero. His hand on my back became firm, possessive. Julian's eyes slid immediately from Ethan to me, his gaze sweeping over my emerald dress with unvarnished appreciation. Well. Who is this stunning creature? I thought you only kept servers and algorithms in your company, Ethan. You never introduced me to your lovely companion. Julian extended a hand toward me, flashing a rehearsed, blinding smile. Julian Sterling. And you are? Sienna Brooks, executive liaison, I said, offering a polite, professional smile as I reached to shake his hand. Julian took my hand, but instead of a standard handshake, he bowed slightly and brushed his lips against the back of my fingers. A liaison? A crime to keep. Such beauty buried in paperwork. If Vance Technologies ever underpays you, Ms. Brooks, Sterling Cloud would gladly double your salary. And give you a much more accommodating boss. A suffocating silence dropped over the immediate radius. Before I could pull my hand back, Ethan stepped directly between Julian and me, cutting off Julian's view entirely. The sheer physical presence of Ethan was suddenly overwhelming. The air around him crackled with raw, predatory hostility. Her salary is non-negotiable, Ethan said, his voice terrifyingly calm, but carrying an edge sharp enough to split steel. And her contract is exclusive. Step away from her, Julian, before I buy out your primary data center just to evict you into the street. Julian's smile faltered, a flash of genuine shock crossing his face. Relax. Ethan. It was just a compliment. It was an overstep, Ethan replied coldly. We're done here. Without giving Julian another second, Ethan wrapped his hand around my wrist, spun me around, and pulled me straight onto the center of the dance floor. The orchestra was playing a slow, sweeping waltz. Before I could protest, Ethan pulled me into his arms. One hand settled firmly against the small of my back, right against the bare skin exposed by the emerald dress, while his other hand clasped mine, fingers interlocking seamlessly. The heat of his palm sent an electric shock straight up my spine. Ethan, I gasped, looking up at his rigid jawline. What are you doing? Everyone is looking at us. Let them look, he murmured, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. He guided me into the rhythm of the waltz, with effortless grace, spinning us across the polished marble. You were supposed to go to table 4. I hissed, trying to keep my voice down, while my body betrayed me by moving perfectly in time with his. Forget table 4, Ethan said softly. I can't forget table 4. The networking strategy depends on. Table 4. Sienna. He tightened his grip, pulling me an inch closer, until the front of my dress brushed against his tuxedo. I could feel the rapid, heavy thumping of his heartbeat against my chest. Stop talking about business. Then what do you want me to talk about? Talk about 5 years ago. My breath hitched. The ballroom, the music, the shimmering chandeliers, everything seemed to fade into a blur, leaving only the two of us, suspended in the center of the room. Why did you leave? Ethan asked, his voice raw, stripped entirely of the corporate billionaire armor. You disappeared on a Tuesday morning. You left your dorm key on my desk, blocked my number, and never answered a single email. Why? Pain, sharp and ancient, flared in my chest. Why? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Ethan, you never cared. I chased you for 6 months. I brought you food, I sat through your coding marathons, I dragged you to social events. And for that entire month we were together, you were like a ghost. You never held my hand in public. You never introduced me to your friends. When I told you I got that summer internship in Chicago, you just said, good job, and went back to your laptop. You didn't care if I stayed or left. Ethan stopped moving. Right in the middle of the dance floor, oblivious to the couples swaying around us, he froze. His dark eyes were wide with genuine, unadulterated shock. Is that really what you thought? He whispered. What else was I supposed to think? My voice trembled, years of buried humiliation and heartache bubbling to the surface. I felt like a nuisance you finally gave in to because you were too polite to say no. You idiot, Ethan breathed, his voice cracking slightly with emotion. Excuse me? I didn't hold your hand because my palms were sweating so badly from nervousness that I was terrified you'd find me disgusting, Ethan confessed, the words pouring out of him with desperate velocity. I didn't introduce you to my friends because they were crude, loud idiots and I wanted you all to myself. And when you told me about Chicago. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I spent 3 days straight coding a freelance architecture framework so I could sell it, buy a train ticket, and rent a sublet apartment 3 blocks away from your office in Chicago. The day you left the key on my desk was the day the payment cleared. I had the train ticket in my coat pocket, Sienna. The world tilted on its axis. I stared at him, my mouth slightly open, my brain refusing to compute the reality of his words. You bought a ticket? I had a spreadsheet of every coffee shop between your apartment and your office, Ethan said, his eyes burning with unshed tears and 5 years of unspoken longing. I was terrified of losing you. I thought you were brilliant, gorgeous, and far out of my league. I thought if I didn't become someone successful, someone who could give you everything you deserved, you would eventually realize how boring I was and leave. He leaned in, his forehead almost resting against mine, his breath warm against my trembling lips. And then you left anyway. My chest seized. All the anger, all the defenses I had built over half a decade, shattered into dust. Ethan. Before he could answer, the sharp chiming of the gala's master of ceremonies echoed over the speakers, announcing the charity auction. The spell broke. Guests began applauding, shifting toward the main stage. Ethan blinked, pulling back slightly, his expression shuddering back into his composed, guarded persona, though his breathing remained shallow. We need fresh air, he said quietly, gripping my hand and leading me toward the French doors that opened to the grand balcony. The night air on the balcony was crisp and cool, chilling the flushed skin of my shoulders. The city light stretched below us like a sea of fallen stars. I stood by the stone balustrade, my mind spinning violently. He had bought a train ticket. He had planned to follow me to Chicago. All those years, while I thought I was just an annoying pest he tolerated, he was quietly, desperately trying to build a world for me. Sienna, Ethan said, stepping up beside me. He took off his tuxedo jacket and gently draped it over my shoulders. The warmth of his body heat and the scent of his cologne wrapped around me like a protective cocoon. Why didn't you tell me back then? I asked, my voice barely a whisper against the wind. Because I was a coward, he said simply. I was 22, broke, and drowning in ambition. I thought words were useless unless I had the results to back them up. I looked at him. And now? You have the results. You have the empire. And none of it mattered, he said, turning to face me fully, because the only person I wanted to share it with was gone. My phone suddenly buzzed violently in my evening clutch. Then it buzzed again. And again. I fumbled with the latch, pulling out the device. It was Snapchat. A barrage of notifications from Sylvia. Sylvia, you look breathtaking in green. Sylvia, the dance was lovely. Sylvia, Julian Sterling won't be bothering you again. I'm having his board review his conduct on Monday. I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen. My eyes darted from the phone to Ethan, who was standing beside me, leaning casually against the railing, his hands in his trouser pockets. Julian Sterling won't be bothering you again. Nobody on the ballroom floor heard Ethan threaten Julian's data center. Ethan had whispered it directly into Julian's ear while shielding me. Black doesn't suit your skin tone. Wear emerald green. What kind of girls does Ethan Vance like? Solid black avatar. Solid gray avatar. A bolt of lightning ripped through my brain, connecting every bizarre, absurd, impossible dot from the past 3 weeks. The $5 million commission. The highly specific target. The fact that my dad, a notoriously clumsy operator, somehow landed the biggest tech titan in the country on his first try. The strawberry milk in the fridge. I slowly raised my phone, staring at Ethan. Ethan, I said, my voice eerily calm. Yes? What is your mother's maiden name? Ethan didn't blink. Sylvia. Sylvia Vance. And what, I continued, taking a step toward him, is the name of the secondary holding company that funded your initial seed round? A slow, utterly unapologetic smirk began to spread across his impossibly handsome face. Sylvia Capital LLC. I tapped the screen, opening the Snapchat profile settings for Sylvia. I hit the linked phone number preview. The last 4 digits were 0-8-2-4. Ethan's birthday. August 24th. You. I screamed, lunging forward and smacking his chest with my beaded clutch. It was you. You are Ms. Sylvia. Ethan didn't even flinch. He caught my wrist mid-swing, laughing, a rich, deep, genuine laugh that echoed across the balcony. Sienna, watch the bag, the beads are scratching my shirt. You psycho. You absolute technological lunatic. I yelled, trying to pull my wrist free, but he held on effortlessly, pulling me closer. You hired my dad's matchmaking agency to match you with yourself? I hired your dad's agency to get you, Ethan corrected smoothly, pulling me until my front collided with his chest. I knew your dad's business was struggling. I knew you lost your job at the marketing firm last month. And I knew your dad's favorite trick was sending his family members to do corporate espionage. I gasped in utter disbelief. You orchestrated my entire unemployment? No. I didn't, 'cause you're firing, that was your incompetent previous boss, Ethan said defensively. I simply capitalized on the market opportunity. I offered your father $5 million to find my ideal match, on the strict condition that his best undercover operative handle the account. My dad sold me out for $5 million. Actually, he held out until I promised him the downtown condo for you, Ethan admitted, a glint of triumph dancing in his eyes. Your father is surprisingly protective. He made me sign a notarized clause stating that if I broke your heart again, he keeps the $5 million and gets the penthouse deed free and clear. I stood there, completely overwhelmed, my jaw hanging open. You spent $5 million, just to make me your assistant and talk to me on Snapchat with a gray icon? I would have spent $50 million, Ethan said, his voice dropping all trace of humor, turning fiercely sincere. I spent 5 years waiting for you to come back into my life, Sienna. When I saw your resume pop up in my industry network after your company went under, I realized that if I waited for you to forgive me on your own, we'd both be 80 years old. I had to create a scenario where you couldn't run away from me. So you called me ugly? Ethan chuckled, his thumbs gently caressing the sides of my jaw, tilting my face up toward his. I never called you ugly. I said I like pretty ones. And you, Sienna Brooks, have been the only definition of pretty I've known since I was 19 years old. The anger melted out of me, replaced by a dizzying rush of warmth that made my knees feel completely weak. You are completely insane, I whispered. I am, Ethan agreed softly, leaning in until his lips were mere millimeters from mine. Insanely, irrevocably in love with you. I was then, I am now, and I will be for the rest of my life. Will you please fire Ms. Sylvia and take the CEO instead? I looked into those dark, brilliant eyes, the eyes of the boy who studied until dawn, the man who built an empire, the idiot who bought a train ticket to Chicago and kept it in his pocket for 5 years. I reached up, wrapping my arms around his neck, letting the rented emerald dress rustle against his suit. Only if I still get the condo, I murmured. The condo, the building, the tech company, and everything I own, Ethan whispered against my mouth. It's all yours. And then, under the cold city stars and the glow of the Horizon Gala, he kissed me. It wasn't hesitant like our college days. It was deep, desperate, and possessive, a 5-year promise finally fulfilled, sweeping away all the years of silence and misunderstanding in a single, breathtaking heartbeat. 6 months later, the Brooks matchmaking agency had officially relocated from its dingy second-floor office above a dry cleaner to the top floor of a gleaming glass skyscraper in the financial district. On the mahogany wall behind the reception desk, a massive gold plaque read, Brooks Elite Matchmaking, 100% success rate, client privacy absolute. Inside the corner office, my dad was sitting behind an enormous teak desk, proudly polishing a framed photograph of Ethan and me at our engagement party. My phone chimed on the desk. Ethan, are you done with your dad's quarterly audit? I'm waiting in the garage. Strawberry milk is in the cup holder. I smiled, typing back a quick heart emoji before locking the screen. Dad, I called out, picking up my purse. I'm heading out. Ethan's downstairs. My dad looked up, adjusting his luxury gold-rimmed reading glasses, grinning from ear to ear. Tell my favorite son-in-law I said hello, my dad shouted cheerfully. And remind him that our agency takes a 10% renewal fee on all 5-year anniversaries. I rolled my eyes, laughing as I walked out toward the elevator. Save your breath, Dad. The answer is no. I stepped into the elevator, watching the doors slide shut, perfectly content with the knowledge that sometimes, the worst undercover mission in the world turns out to be the greatest match ever made.